Be able to connect with Shaka now, and I'm sure you're all interested in talking about the debate that happened on Saturday, which was quite an eye-opener. Now we go live to Shaka Ssali, who is standing by in WBS TV in Kampala. Good evening, Shaka. Shaka, can you hear me?
Thank you so much. Here with me, of course, is my co-host, Peter Kibazo. Thank you so much. Host of Face Off and Issues at Hand program. Good evening, Peter.
Thank you, Shaka. And it is evening here, STA in Kampala, a very hot one at that. And good evening, my friend Morrison in the Washington studio, and Professor Nyang. I'm greatly honored to host Shaka, or to be co-host to Shaka this evening. And we'll go straight first. Shaka, we are celebrating 15 years of Straight Talk Africa. 15 years of Straight Talk Africa going around Africa. It comes a very important time when Uganda has an election that happens tomorrow. I need to come to you straight, Shaka. You've covered Africa, you've interviewed African presidents over the 15 years, interacted with them. What is your experience with the elections around Africa, with the interaction with African presidents? When do they say it's tick-off time?
I think that, well, first of all, again, thank you so much, Peter, obviously, for co-hosting with me here in Kampala. And I have to say that, again, I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have the opportunity to interact with you on this election eve in our mother country, Uganda. You know, having hosted Straight Talk Africa for the last 15 years, I have to say that I have had the opportunity to see the democratic process really developing, in the sense that there was a time when we just started, all we were covering for the most part, we're talking about liberation struggles. We're talking about Rwanda. We're talking about Sudan. Now we have Sudan and South Sudan. We just talk about Burundi. We talked about countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, you name it, DRC. We're pretty much covering, you know, armed struggles, really. But over the last 10 or so years, we've seen some kind of remarkable, I think, progress, in the sense that if you go to West Africa, for example, you can see that as far as the continent is concerned, they are probably number one in terms of, in fact, holding credible elections. And then they are followed by SADC countries in Southern Africa. And then, of course, the ones that frankly come behind is Central and East Africa, not to mention the northern part of the continent.
Shaka, I need, as you reflect on the 15 years, to tell me, what is the turning point for those countries? Ghana, for example, had very much a similar situation as Uganda. You have a leader that comes in as a liberator, but at some point decides it's cut-off time and decides to pass on. You have Liberia that falls apart completely and then recovers from the ashes and becomes a model that is admirable in Africa. What is it that they are that is not East Africa?
You know, when you talk about Ghana, for example, they were very lucky to have had Flight Lieutenant John Jerry Rawlings, retired but certainly not tired. Very good friend of mine, actually, for many, many years. And you also have to look at the Ghanaian diaspora. They have a huge Ghanaian diaspora that is very powerful in terms of influencing events back at home in Ghana. And the leadership in Ghana was able to work together with the Ghanaian diaspora. And of course, a lot of Ghanaians also, when it comes to education, they are relatively better educated. We forget, by the way, that they regained their political independence back on March 6, 1957, my friend, under the Osajifo himself, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. So I think they are in a totally different league. They have been able to sort themselves out because, in fact, it is one of the few countries on the African continent where parties have actually been, have been actually succeeding in each other at State House, Osu Castle, when it used to be Osu Castle. You have, for example, a president representing the NDC party, and then you have the NPP. You know, one serves, 8 years, and when you go for someone trying to get a first term after the president in that party has won, has actually been in office, you find that the party in opposition actually wins the election.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Shaka, I need to come closer home. Tanzania has been changing, possibly within the same party, but there's been move over from one government, from one leader to another to another. Kenya has had pitfalls. Aren't those lessons enough for next door neighbors Rwanda and Uganda?
I think Tanzania, when it comes to the presidency,
yes,
you could perhaps accurately say that at that level there is democracy. Because when you look back, you're talking about 3 former presidents who are now living
one of
in
whom
Tanzania.
Is here to monitor elections in Uganda.
That is correct, Ali Hassan Mwinyi. And then when it comes down to, the parliamentary level and what have you, you still have a lot of problems there. And when you go to Zanzibar again, which is part of Tanzania, you have incredible problems there. Because in fact, as we talk, the last election was illegally annulled, perhaps because, as far as the evidence is concerned, the opposition party, CUF, had actually won. And now they are calling for, a sort of a new election of sorts. And of course, the opposition party, I think, is going perhaps to maybe not participate in it really, because they don't think that they can get any different results.
Before we possibly come to Uganda or pose us back to Esther, I need to ask you, Shaka, 15 years of Straight Talk Africa, I have been checking today, you haven't hosted the Ugandan president. He's been a president for all that period.
I think you're wrong. In fact, the last time I hosted him on Straight Talk Africa was back in, I believe, in the summer of 2002.
Okay, not yesterday.
That was Straight Talk Africa, but that has to be the last time that, in fact, he has granted me an interview.
Is that because you haven't invited him, or is that actually what has been on social media around Kampala, that there is actually bad blood between yourself and His Excellency in Kampala?
I don't know anything about that, really, bad blood. When you go to the social media, you expect citizen journalism to say whatever they want. I don't think that the situation is like that. It seems to me that each time at least we have tried to approach him, to have him on the show, he has had other prior commitments.
And engagements. Shaka, Uganda cracked a fast within East Africa. In spite of our teething democracy or the absence of it, you came in here to host a presidential debate, the first of its type. Your reflections on that?
An incredible experience, Peter. I don't know whether in fact it's the first time, because the last time I checked, I thought that your television station itself, many years back, actually did something of this sort.
We actually attempted one. I was the moderator of one, but not all the presidential candidates showed up. Only 2 of them did show up. So this one was a classical one, because all of them showed up and all of them were in front of the media. And for me, it's an experience unimaginable.
One thing I can say is that I think holding that debate was a significant positive step in the right direction. Because for the first time, Peter, at least in the history of the democratization process of Uganda,
yes,
the political playing field was leveled at that stage for the 4 hours. You saw that the president, for example, followed the rules and procedures and what have you. There was humility, there was interaction, there was handshaking, and you name it. And I think that's very good for this country.
Of course, I should be answering that because I've been in Kampala longer. But do you think that permeates into the election itself?
I don't know. We have yet to find out. Of course, tomorrow is the real day. Tomorrow, people are going to cast their votes. Let's see what happens. But let's hope that people will have the opportunity to cast their vote, vote for whoever is someone that they feel is the one they would like to see in State House or Parliament and what have you. And let's also hope that the Electoral Commission, which has been under enormous criticism, at the end of the day will bring the sort of results that reflect the will of the Ugandan people.
That's a real test. And having been in Kampala, and I know my friend Morrison in the Washington studio, if he were in Kampala, he possibly would be campaigning, would be on the campaign trail now. And from the comments I've seen in Washington, there is a particular challenge that I'm looking at: the urbanized Uganda and the rural Uganda, with the reflection of an election. Uganda is having an election at which 5.3 million people for the first time are registered voters for a first time. You have 5.3 million newly registered voters who are between 18 years and 24 years. 5.3 million people. Demographics, that age bracket is, according to Uganda Bureau of Statistics, about 83% unemployed. Does that become the momentous mass that changes the electoral tide? I don't know.
That could be the elephant in the room.
Well, that is one of those. But there is the question of peace and security, or as it were, that has lingered for the last 30 years. President Museveni has sold peace, has sold stability, and said, oh, we have peace, we have stability. That against infrastructural development, that against other economic empowerment and development. And is that a factor that wins or loses the elections in Africa?
Now, Peter, when you talk about peace, and I think it is generally referred to in the local language in Uganda,
yes.
But what about those?
We are sleeping a bit.
Precisely. But what about some who have been actually saying that peace is not necessarily the absence of war, but in fact it is the presence of social, economic justice, accountability, and reconciliation?
Which possibly have been here and there lacking in this and this. But you see, you're talking about a country that has been pegged to 5 years of destruction between 81 and 86, and the memory of that people are often reminded. And that has become either the election. If you've looked at advertisements.
Unfortunately, Peter, I am told that time happens not to be our best ally.
Yes.
And I have to ask Esther to take it away.